I've done straight up traditional seller financing where there's not a bank involved. I'm not assuming debt or paying their debt on their behalf. They're loaning money to me for me to purchase their property, with the property becoming their collateral.
It's really fascinating because I think there are so many people that are caught in the pursuit of the financial independence. And when you're trying to pursue something and it seems unattainable, it seems like I don't know if I'm going to get there, but that's my focus and that's where I'm going to get. It's hard to see beyond that. And
Right.
Who we become and how we're shaped through that process changes us. So we're no longer the same version of ourselves. So that also has a place. So you can quickly find yourself in a different, same body, but kind of a different person and just feel a little dizzy. Welcome back, or welcome to the Conscious Investor Podcast. This is the show where we talk about health, mindset, and wealth building strategies. I'm your host, Julie Holly, and guess what? Happy Thursday. I'm so excited to share this Thursday with you. I know on Monday we were hanging out, just two of us, on the mindset episode, which we do every Monday. And Thursdays are that special day. I know I usually rave about Mondays, but I decided we got to start raving about Thursdays because this is the day when we have extraordinary guests joining us on the show. And do you know how I find most of my guests? I haven't mentioned this in a while, but most of my guests are people that I actually know personally, which is really cool when you start looking at, who's been on the show. I'm like, these are people I know personally, and they're just wonderful go-givers who want to pour into you, conscious investor. But there are other ways that how do I meet those people? Well, I go to events. Well, last year, almost to the date of when I'm recording this, I was at a mastermind in New Orleans. One of my friends invited me. In fact, you should check out his event, RubeCon in 2025. St. Louis is where it will take place. But my good friend Dustin Heiner invited me to join the mastermind he and another good friend of ours, Michael Kwan, were putting on. And in that process, I met Denise Ford. Oh my gosh, she's amazing. I know you listened to her episode already on the Conscious Investor Podcast, and I know that you're excited to meet her in person and to hear her speak about land investing further at the Conscious Investor Growth Summit in March. But Denise and I were talking recently, and she introduced me. She said, Julie, I have to introduce you to this gentleman. And the moment we spoke on the phone, I was like, oh, wow. Now I see exactly why my good friend Denise wanted to introduce Beau and I to each other. He is absolutely so much fun to talk to and has such a different approach to investing. In fact, basically everything that you've been told, he's done it a different way. And guess what? It works out splendidly. And that's one of my favorite things is that there isn't a single way to be successful in real estate investing. And so I'm absolutely confident that you're going to, some of you are going to feel really reaffirmed in, I'm okay. I am being successful, even though it doesn't look like what they're saying over on all these shows and the YouTubes and the stages, right? It doesn't have to. If it's working for you, it's working. And that's the whole purpose. And Beau's going to get into that, I know. However, we got to welcome him on the show. So let's do that. Hey, Beau, welcome to the Conscious Investor Podcast.
Hi, Julie. Thanks for having me. Super happy to be here. And Denise, if you're listening to this, thank you for making that introduction between me and Julie. Denise is awesome. I've learned a lot from her kind of strategy with land investing and just how she looks at deals and looks at her processes and things like that. So super grateful, super happy to be here.
It's so fun when you have great people in your life. They have a tendency to introduce you to other wonderful, great people. And so It's just like, wow, what a gold mine. And we happen to be in the same state now, but you've lived all over the place. I'm going to get ahead of myself. So before I do that, I am going to throw the baton your way, and Conscious Investor. If this is your first episode, just know this is a question of all questions that we launch every guest with. And you know what? If you've been listening for a while, you're waiting for it. So you're ready. Beau, what do you do and how did you get started?
What do I do? I think the best way to answer that is I am a recent full-time investor. I just exited the military. I was in the Army for 7 years. I went to the military academy at West Point. I graduated from there, went to flight school, learned how to fly helicopters for the Army. And that was my first job. Got assigned to Fort Bragg, North Carolina, as my first duty station. And yeah, I don't want to get too off track or too in the weeds, but essentially, as I progressed in my career in the military, enjoyed it, learned a lot from the people that I met and bosses I worked for and soldiers I got to lead. And flying was an exhilarating experience. But with all of that, I still kind of learned about myself and what motivates me and what I value. And personal autonomy and kind of freedom to do things the way that I want to do them, freedom to choose the tasks and the projects that I want to take on at what time, and just freedom to be with my family when I want to be with my family, made me realize that maybe there would come a day that I wanted to have other options outside of the military. So kind of as I was having those thoughts, a mentor of mine introduced me to Rich Dad Poor Dad, a book that many of us have heard mentioned, The 4 Hour Work Week, Your Money or Your Life, and some other books that pointed me towards real estate specifically, but pointed me towards different paths to begin building streams of income or begin building options over time so that I could potentially step away from a career in the military, step away from an active job, replaced with those investments over time. So that's maybe the long answer to what I'm doing and initially how I got started.
It's so interesting. I love that you're in you were in the military. I mean, West Point, come on, conscious investor. That's a thing. That's a big deal to get in, to be accepted into West Point, to graduate from West Point, to become a helicopter pilot. All of these things are massive accomplishments that so many people strive for. And so I have to ask, at what point? Because when I think of the military, I do think of rigidity and structure and following orders. And we don't care that you don't like this task, you're doing this task. And so at what point did you realize I want more autonomy? Was the military process part of that, or?
It was absolutely part of that. And I have nothing bad to say about the military. I think it was more learning about myself. There's a place for structure. There's a place for discipline. And there's a place for being told where to be and when to be there and what to do when you're there. And I learned a ton from the experience. As I said, I met a lot of people and did a lot of cool things. But I think it was just a process of realizing how much I valued personal autonomy. Everyone's different, and I just realized how much that was a big thing to me, and it didn't necessarily jive with how I saw myself being in the military long term.
Yeah. I don't mean to pick at this, but there are people that are on the cusp of having that discovery themselves, and that's why I am pressing in on this. Is that some people, they're listening to the show and they're like, why is that starting to resonate with me? On the show, we talk about agency and autonomy and personal freedom. I mean, these are central beliefs to the conscious investor. Personal freedom over financial freedom, because financial freedom is part of that. And so, it's like, this is really like a part of the heartbeat of a conscious investor. And so it's interesting to, hear from someone who basically had the metamorphosis of, okay, well, I operated well within the structure. I could do it and I could play the games and I thrived. It's great. I was very successful. And I had this discovery. If you don't mind me leaning in just a little more on that, like,
Okay.
Were you married? Were you and your wife married or together? And was it more like, wait, I want to be with my wife. I want to start a family. I mean, were there some outside pressures that really kind of helped spur that personal understanding?
For sure, yeah. Family and the thought and dreams of a growing family was always kind of the main thing behind my motivation to want more freedom. So I actually met who would become my wife my last day of flight school. I was graduating from flight school. A friend of mine that was in my flight school class from Elko, Nevada, which is where my wife is from. My wife came up to see her graduate, and that friend ended up kind of connecting me and my wife. And so it was my very last day there. The next day I shipped out, loaded up the U-Haul, and drove to North Carolina. But our initial interaction was enough for us to keep in touch. And yeah, so we throughout my time in the military, I was either dating, engaged to, or married to my wife. We had a daughter 18 months ago, and then we just had a son earlier this month. So he's almost a month old. So now we're a family of four, and yeah, that's a huge part of the motivation. There's plenty of military families that do it, and they do it well. There's certainly sacrifice there. Not to say that you can't be a good father in the military at all, but that was just a part of my motivation to, hey, I want to call the shots as to when I'm home, and what I'm doing with my time, and also what projects I'm pursuing outside of the military professionally to provide for my family.
It's so huge. I used to be a public school teacher, and great, yay for anyone who is an educator. Like there was a different path for me that my life needed to go on. So it's always nice when we can also have that freedom to just say, like, it's never a value statement about other people and
Right.
what their choices are. It's just like, this is just where I'm supposed to be, and this is the lane I'm supposed to drive in life. And life's a beautiful place when we're in our lanes and we can
Yes.
be in that zone of genius and thrive. And you have thrived. So your real estate investing portfolio is really interesting because while most people stick to a single asset class and they become experts at it, you have had a very different perspective in building out a very eclectic investment portfolio. And I'm just wondering, like, would you go ahead and just elaborate on kind of what your thought process was?
Sure. So it happened over time. My first purchase was a duplex because at the time that seemed like the easiest way to get into a property, figure it out. I was a primary, or it was a primary residence. So I occupied the property, was able to use an FHA loan to put 3.5% down. So at the time I just needed, hey, how do I get into a property with minimal funds essentially as a down payment and kind of cut my teeth on being a small landlord? So yeah, that was a great experience for me, and I kind of stayed in that path for a while. I used my VA loan, which is an incredible benefit to military members and veterans, to purchase two other fourplexes as house hack opportunities. So in a pretty short amount of time, relatively short amount of time, I found myself with multiple units from using those purchases strategically. By the way, I still own all of those properties. As I kind of began renovating some of the properties, I realized, hey, these can be great deals, but they still require not only time and effort, but capital, even if you're not putting much down. So that led me to learning about different financing strategies. Seller financing is something I had heard about other people using successfully, and it immediately appealed to me, appealed to my sense of creativity, and I don't want to say I'm a rule breaker, but I've always kind of questioned the rules or asked, like, how do I work within the rules to do what I want to do that might not be what most people would assume you can do within the rules. And seller financing became my next kind of focus, and ended up finding multiple sellers that were in a position that they could entertain something like that. So purchased two different portfolios from sellers. One was 5 units, another was 11 units, using almost 100% seller financing. We're still in residential. Sorry if I'm going too long here. We're still in residential.
No, you're
At
fine.
that point, I think I had realized, hey, it's the deal structure that I'm interested in, and it's cash flow that I'm after to replace my income. Are residential properties the only things that can do that? I learned that they're not. So mobile home parks was another niche that a mentor of mine was actively involved in, And at the time, they're more popular now for sure, but at the time, that seemed like a crazy idea to me. But the cash flow, from what I heard, was very good. So began kind of pursuing mobile home parks and meeting people in my area in North Carolina that were doing the same. Was introduced to a partner. His name is also Beau, as it happened, and we purchased a mobile home park together. My dad as well. So it was a three-way partnership. Purchased a mobile home park, which was a great source of cash flow. Um, yeah, I don't want to spend too much time on one thing, but over time, as we went, I was just open to different asset classes. I wasn't stuck on mobile home parks at that point. From there, we bought some Airbnb properties that cash flowed very well. From there, we purchased some small commercial properties, a 8-unit multifamily property, and then have even recently dove into assisted living, because the cash flow was great and it just seemed like a good opportunity, and we were able to make the deal work. So, long-winded way of saying we didn't focus on a single niche, but each individual deal, if it made sense from a financing perspective and a cash flow perspective, we were very open to it and excited to learn that new way of doing things.
That right there is it's absolute pure gold, because so often real estate investors get locked into their lane and they're just fixated on it. It's like, oh no, I need to know this so that I can be the expert and be great at it. But I love that you had your focus was, hey, we need to have cash flow. That's what we're going for. That's our number one goal. And however we generate that cash flow within the real estate realm, awesome. We'll figure it out. We'll make it happen. And then boom, your portfolio grows. And so I think it points to that, just one of the first principles of, if we know what we're going after, right? A first principle is the most finite thing that we're, like the foundation of something, the most like smallest form of it. Okay, we're after cash flow. Well, great. What are all the ways that we can generate cash flow? Let's just like look at all of that, because we know what our first principle is. So it's amazing. And I haven't ever met an investor that has been so fixated on the first principle of, in this case, cash flow. Most people mix it, and it's cash flow in single family, cash flow in multifamily, cash flow in triple net lease, and it's like, no, it has to be through this one vehicle, which that's actually another layer above that first principle of cash flow. So, I mean, really, you demonstrate the power of knowing, like, hey, if I know I'm going for cash flow, sky's the limit. Let's go.
And now it is definitely an intentional decision, but I wouldn't say along the entire road that it was. It just kind of happened that way. And then I looked at a portfolio of diversified asset classes across different states and said, hey, there's some benefits here, and this is doable. So now that is my focus, like you said.
That's so good. So seller financing is it feels scary to a lot of people. A lot of people are like, why would the seller, want to sell to me, seller carry? How would I even find a seller like that? If I do, or if I carry the note. Pace was on the show some months back, right? And so some people say, oh, well, if I do sub 2 loans, like they're going to come after me. The bank is. So it's a mixed bag. And a lot of people want to stay away and steer clear just because they don't understand it. So how did you get involved with seller financing? Let's start there.
I love seller financing, and I think it is anything but scary. Is it common? No. Is it easy to find? No, but it's pretty simple, and it's not scary if you find the right party that is in a situation that they can entertain that. So, subject to, I can't really speak to that. I've done straight up traditional seller financing where there's not a bank involved. I'm not assuming debt or paying their debt on their behalf. They're loaning money to me for me to purchase their property, with the property becoming their collateral, and me becoming the person paying them like the bank. So how it happened initially, I knew that I needed a means to purchase properties without having to give all my hard-earned capital to it. And seller financing because everything is negotiable, there's sometimes opportunities to purchase properties with smaller down payments or very favorable interest rates. Really, any term is totally negotiable.
Mm-hmm.
So I began looking for that. I began looking for owners of properties, usually landlords, that usually own the property free and clear, which means a lot of the time they'd owned it for a while, and people that didn't need that money immediately to go into something specific at the sale. So if someone's selling a home so that they can purchase another home with the proceeds from that sale, they're likely not a great candidate for seller financing. But if you have a retired Mr. Taylor, who's done very well with his real estate portfolio over time, who is just looking to continue getting a good return on his money and kind of maybe even that's his problem is trying to figure out what to put that money into. He might know that he wants to be done with those rental properties, but then it's okay, do I put it in bonds? Do I put it in the stock market? Do I put it in a bank account? You find the right seller, you can explain how they can continue making a form of mailbox money on a property that they're already familiar with, and with someone that they hopefully come to know and trust. So my first seller finance purchase was a 5-unit property, and trust, like I just said, trust is a huge part of the transaction because there are risks involved. If someone bought a property using seller financing and found a way to run the property into the ground, yes, you can take that property back. That's your assurance. That's your collateral. But if the property is worth less because of how they treated it, that's the risk that you're taking. So it takes building a lot of trust, which takes getting in front of people and offering them things they need to see to learn about who you are and learn about your abilities and your capabilities and your character. So I provide credit reports, referrals, letter from my pastor, and letter from previous bosses, and anything I can provide to show them my real estate experience, to make them feel like I'm a good candidate to run the property that is going to be the collateral for the loan that they're making. I found things that I did not know were possible with seller financing, and that's through building trust, and that's through really educating the seller on the process. I would caution people, if they're afraid of seller financing, to ever go into something that they have even an inkling that the seller might not totally understand all of the implications of a transaction like this. Get out ahead of it and really explain everything that they may or may not already be thinking about, and that builds the trust. If that is not if none of those things are deal breakers for them, for them to move forward.
I love that. One of the things that I love is that in real estate in general, but particularly when it comes to seller financing, hey, everything is negotiable. Everything. Yeah. There is no, this is why you had mentioned that you like to think outside the box and that you're creative. And I fall in that category also. It's just a matter of like, well, what's going to work for everybody? I mean, we don't have to follow this prescribed contract and we have to check these specific boxes. We just need to figure out what boxes we need as individuals to be successful. And how do we make that happen for both of us?
Yeah. The way I describe it, and I describe this to sellers, I say, hey, with a transaction, especially like this, there are a number of levers that we can pull in either direction. And usually a lever in one direction that's good for me is the opposite of what you want, right? So we just kind of have to find between those 4 or 5 levers something that satisfies both of us. So those levers are things like purchase price, down payment, interest rate, the term of the loan, and sometimes there's other things beyond that. But as an example, hey, if one thing you really care about, Mr. Seller, is the purchase price you get, then maybe I can meet you there, and maybe that's even above market price sometimes. But in exchange for that, I'm going to need to pull my lever in this direction so that I can put a small down payment down, and I'm going to need a very appealing interest rate. But in exchange for that, I'll give you a 10-year balloon if you don't want to be in this for 30 years fixed. So and then you kind of just make fine-tune adjustments as you go to see if you can come to an agreement.
How long do your negotiations with sellers typically take?
A lot of my bigger purchases, so I mentioned those 2 portfolios, Um, we've purchased 2 commercial properties using seller financing, a couple other kind of single family one-off properties, um, and a set of storage units using seller financing. And I am not like making an appointment with them and, hey, I need an answer by the time I leave this appointment. It's nothing like that because it's so built on trust, and it's a big decision. And I think sellers, they have to know you, like you, trust you, and have faith in you. And if I'm being too pushy, then that might go against the liking me part of that transaction. So yeah, I encourage them to really think about it. I usually present them like a written description or a video of what we've talked about, and say, hey, talk to your CPA, understand the implications, talk to your attorney, talk to your spouse and your family, pray about it, and let's meet again whenever you're ready to continue talking about it. And that approach is not super salesman-y, and there might be better approaches for timeliness or for scale, but that approach has served me well for building trust with sellers.
Yeah, it's such a good approach. Now, are these properties that you? How are we finding these properties? That's the basic baseline question right there. And I know, conscious investor, you're wondering the same thing.
Not a great answer, but I'm finding these properties by having my eyes open all the time and looking for them. I'm not going to, I don't have like a process like, oh, text campaigns or big direct letter campaigns. Though I have sent direct letters and I have sent text messages, and I've called sellers a lot, just cold calling, and a lot from referrals. I talk about seller financing a lot because people want to hear about it when I hint at it, or they've heard me say a little bit about it. They want to know more. And over time, that has turned into people thinking of me when it comes to seller financing. And some deals recently have come from, hey, this sounds like this seller may be in a place that they consider something like this. Do you want me to make the connection with friends or with real estate agents or with other investors? Initially, a lot of it was luck. It was just looking for sellers that had equity in their properties. And sometimes you can find that through PropStream and through other services. But most of the time I was just cold calling and I was asking, do you have a loan on the property? And sometimes people don't like disclosing that. And they say, why does that matter to you? And I explain why it matters to me. Hey, I'm trying to be creative here. And there's some pretty creative ways we can look at something if you don't have a loan on the property. Doesn't work for most people, but for the right people that it does work for, it can be pretty powerful. So sorry, I don't have a great answer for that. My journey just has been a lot of somewhat random, sometimes coincidences, or call them blessings, but just being ready to engage with the seller and explain the process. However that connection came about, be it referral, be it cold calling, be it meeting them at a real estate meetup or whatever.
That's really interesting. So initially, I am gonna, you're like eyes wide open, and I'm the same way where I'm always looking around me as to what's taking place. I'm always just absorbing a lot of information because I'm looking for a lot of different things in life. And from the conscious investor, you get it, like from the mindset side, from the health side, from the relationship side, to the real estate side, to alternative investing strategies. I'm like always just wide eyed, just the sponge absorbing in learning. So I get that wide eyed part. I can hear the conscious investor saying, like, okay, I'm looking, but I don't exactly know what I'm looking for. It's almost like since I live in the mountains and now you live down in Boise, you get to see a lot of deer also. Well, maybe not necessarily, but if you go out, you're going to see, I see deer constantly everywhere I go. And sometimes my husband or one of my teens will say like, oh, you see that one? And I'm like, I know there's a deer there, but I can't see it. Right. And so I can hear like a conscious investor saying like, okay, I know that there's opportunity all around me, but it's camouflaged. And I just don't know how to how can I put the night vision goggles on or whatever so that I can see through everything and see what you're seeing?
Yeah, no, that's totally true. And my example is before I invested in real estate, before I purchased that first duplex as a house hack, months before that, I don't even know if I'd ever even thought about what a duplex was. Just like as I learned a little bit about real estate initially and learned about the idea of house hacking, you live in a small multifamily property that you can use the same type of loan as you would use on a single family, but you have tenants living next to you and they're helping you make the payment, or they're making all of your payment. You're cash flowing and getting paid to live there. Once I realized that that was a thing, and I said, hey, a duplex would be perfect for this, I could not drive without seeing a duplex. And to this day, my wife and I just got back from taking my daughter and son to the library for like a public reading or kind of a kids event. And I saw like 3 duplexes. And my wife makes fun of me because I call out any property that has multiple meters or multiple mailboxes. I'm just trained to look for that. So when you realize the opportunity that comes with recognizing something, just as a hunter is going to see a deer in the forest, a real estate investor that wants to house hack is going to see a duplex anytime they pass by one. A piece of advice I think related to that, or something that I found true, is listening to or interacting with or reading stories about other investors and specific deals they've done and how it's worked for them opens your eyes to those opportunities. Mobile home parks, for example, I never would have thought about had I not connected with my mentor who was investing in that. And then it was like, oh, mobile home parks. Like, I don't hear many people talking about that, but now I'm noticing them when I see them. Some are nice, some are obviously not. And it just kind of opened my eyes to that. I'll stop there.
This is my life. Yes. And depending on what I might be focused on, sometimes if I'm discovering something new, I was like, oh, wow. And there was a period of time where I was looking at mobile home parks and just thinking like, well, where are they? And now I see, once you do it one time, then it's not a switch. You just always see these different elements taking place. So when you, the other question I can hear the conscious investor asking in their head is, well, that's really cool, but you mentioned I called them, and well, how do I even get their contact information? Where do I get that? How do I source that out? Because I know conscious investor, you're driving to work, you see that house and you're like, I want to own that quadplex. I want to own that duplex. I want to own that, but I don't even know how to get in touch. And I'm confident that there are, residents living there that aren't the owners. So now what?
Yeah. So there's a lot of ways to do that. It starts with you can't be afraid to try things that might seem uncomfortable. So I have gotten owners' numbers, like you just said. The residents might not be the owners. I can tell that they're not. I've asked residents, hey, do you have the owner's number? And they say, oh, I have the manager's number. I don't know if they're the owner or not, but all they can do is say no, or no, I'm not willing to give that to you, or whatever. But a lot of the time, yeah, here's the owner's number. That's a way. When I initially started, I was trying to be as lean and as lean as possible, and not spend money on as many subscriptions as I could, and kind of expensive platforms that can be super helpful. But I paid for or maybe it was a trial of like Yellow Pages. And I would use just tax websites first off, tax assessor websites, to find the owner of a given property. And then I would search for that owner's name on Yellow Pages, which I was maybe paying $7 a month for. And I would get like 10 different numbers, and I would call all of them until I reached that owner. So that is a way to do that. There's also things like PropStream and Deal Machine and paid services that sometimes have owner's information as well. And you can just click on the property, see who the owner is, what their address is, what their phone number is, and try calling that way. And there's at scale, you can buy lists essentially of properties that meet certain criteria and the owner information if it's available corresponding to those properties. So it depends how deep you want to go into it, but it starts with not being afraid to. At the end of the day, you're going to have to call an owner that probably doesn't initially want you to call them. So you got to at least overcome that fear and be willing to talk.
What is that like? So you and I are probably maybe more resilient in that regard of the what Michael Gervais calls FOPO, fear of other people's opinions. Like, oh my gosh, what's this owner going to think of me? What are they going to say of me? Like that filters most people. You and I, that's not a filter for us. We're going to ask anyway. But let's just maybe encourage, because I can't imagine too many owners being really cranky with you on the phone necessarily. I mean, how many people, let's just take a, scale of 1 to 10. Is this 80-20? Is it Pareto's principles 80-20, right? Are 80% of those owners like, yeah, okay, cool. You called me, no thanks, or thanks, but they're kosher. And then the 20% are a little cranky and annoyed that you called. Is that a fair, or is it less or more than that?
It's probably somewhere between that and 50-50.
I was going to ask you if it was 50-50.
Or maybe not. Maybe it's 40% of people that are okay you call, 40% of people that aren't super happy, and then 20% of people that are somewhere between not super happy and saying the F word at you. I haven't had that happen
It
a ton.
It boggles my mind that people would respond like that.
Maybe, but
probably not. You've clearly experienced it.
the way that I look at it, the way I see it is I know that I'm going to be forthright with whoever I'm talking with, and I'm going to explain what I'm looking for and how I may be able to work with them or help them or maybe roll it out really quickly. So I know if I have the amount of time, if they give me enough time, I can introduce myself and explain what I'm trying to do and do it in a way that I feel good about, and give them the chance to be the judge of who they're talking to and if I'm someone that can legitimately work with them or help them. And so that's kind of my goal is, hey, how do I buy enough time to see if this could be a good fit? And sometimes they don't give you that opportunity, and you call the next person.
Next.
Yeah.
That's it. My dad, my grandpa always said that. Just next. Just keep going.
Yeah. And honestly, I have not done a ton of cold calling. I don't want to make it sound like I have. I feel like I've just been very fortunate on somehow being able to connect with people that answer the phone and, hey, yeah, actually, no, I'm not interested in selling this duplex, but I have a mobile home park. Would you be interested in that? But it just, you got to put yourself out there initially, or at least to some degree, but you never know what can happen from that.
Get yourself on the radar.
Yep, exactly.
I love it. All right, Beau, is there any, if you could go back, and I don't have canned questions, so this is something that has just really come from everything that you've said. If you could go back to the beginning of your investing, you're buying that duplex again, and you're house hacking and such. Actually, I'm limiting you, and you're a limitless sort of person. So let's just say at any given point in your investment journey, in the future, even if you want to go to future you, what's kind of, I know, I told you, I know you're a limitless person. So we can go we can even go to the quantum realm. If you want to go there, we can do that. But what is some advice or insight that you think that would benefit you?
Start with the end in mind has been the common idea that I've thought about a lot the past few years. My end in mind was always, at least initially, replace my Army income, replace my W-2 income, that generate enough cash flow to live off for me and my family, and as my family grows. So that was my end in mind, and with that end in mind, I was able to work towards that constantly and ultimately reach it quicker than I thought that I would. And I'm very happy it worked out that way. But maybe there would have been a better end in mind for me to have above and beyond that, not just in terms of finances or numbers or properties owned, but it has to be more sometimes than you think. You have to really ask yourself, like, what's my why? Why is that my why? What are the other contributing whys to that why? And if your end in mind is too small, then you might get there sooner than you think, and then you have a new problem, a new problem set. Hey, how do I spend this time? What's meaningful? Where do I go from here? And to be honest, that's sort of where I've been, and it is a great problem to have. But that's sort of where I've been the past. I said I'm recently a full time investor. The past 6 months or so is, hey, which direction do I focus? Do I continue just trying to diversify and look for cash flow at all cost, or do I need to spend time on other things and pursue other passion projects or whatever? And I kind of wish I would have asked those questions sooner. Is my transparent answer.
Your answer very much resonates. I realize that I'm in a similar position, and so and I've had a very similar realization, and it's interesting because you and I are both very expansive, big picture, big vision sort of people, and so it's really interesting that you would say that, and it'll be interesting to see. I've been working on that now for a little bit of time, and I see a direction, and I actually brought an advisor into my life to kind of help flesh some of that out and provide some movement, which has been so much fun. It's really been a lot of fun.
Awesome.
So yeah, do you have an idea of the direction that you might end up going, or?
It depends which day you ask me that question.
Right.
It's constantly what I'm thinking of. It's constantly what my wife and I are talking about and praying about. And I don't want to make it sound like we're just searching for purpose or meaning, but yeah, it's exciting because really it's balance is in my family life. Balance is the big picture answer. I want to find a great balance of working hard and pursuing challenges and overcoming challenges, with obviously spending a ton of time with my family and enjoying the beauty of Idaho, which is one of the huge reasons we moved here, with being involved in community, with fitness, with giving back and using the gifts that I believe I've absolutely been given in different ways to impact other people. So it's all these broad topics or these broad desires, and now I'm trying to really hone in on what are the actionable steps for each of these that I should begin working on.
It's really fascinating because I think there are so many people that are caught in the pursuit of the financial independence. And when you're trying to pursue something and it seems unattainable, it seems like I don't know if I'm going to get there, but that's my focus and that's where I'm going to get. It's hard to see beyond that. And
Right.
who we become and how we're shaped through that process changes us. So we're no longer the same version of ourselves. So that also has a place. So you can quickly find yourself in a new land, in a different same body, but kind of a different person, and just feel a little dizzy. Like, okay, here's a new scenery, and I recognize myself, but I'm not the same person if I look back as I was 7, 10, 15 years ago. And how do I now how do I live life? It's almost like a superhero discovering their superpower. But there are very few people who have the opportunity to have that experience because most people experience setbacks. So the reason I think this is really valuable, in a similar vein of how I leaned into a little bit at the beginning, right, as to, what expanded your mind, when it came to autonomy. So, but in this case, I think, conscious investor, you're there, you're on the precipice of having that financial independence, and know that there's something on the other side of that. And so now you can gain from this conversation to know, like, oh yeah, I am going to gain that financially free life. And then, okay, am I spending 24/7 with my family? Am I working out? Is it split? Like, how am I? Who am I? And really doing that inner work right now before you reach that point of financial independence. That's really great.
Yeah, that's a great thought. Great advice.
Yeah, you gave it. Did you know that? Straight.
Yeah, I was patting myself on the back there.
I know. It's a good one. Beau, this has just been such a dynamic conversation. I appreciate your willingness to let me, just like kind of lean in and get a look-see into what is the thinking behind this, because a lot of times that is, to your point, you mentioned it, it's like the space between our ears, right? I mean, like, we have to mind that. And so with that, sometimes we need role models to show us what's between their ears, just like you had people model, like, this is how I did this deal and how I did that deal. But
Yeah.
there aren't too many people modeling out the thinking of being for other people to see. So I just want to thank you for your willingness to be vulnerable and transparent with that.
Thank you. Same to you. Absolutely.
Yeah, good stuff. Well, if this is resonating with the conscious investor, is there a way that they can reach out to you, especially if they know someone that wants to do seller financing? Offer? They've got a property for sale.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. My phone number there. Yeah. Definitely reach out to me if you have an interesting cash flowing asset class where the owner will finance it. But yeah, I've used Instagram to kind of document individual deals along my journey, because that is what was helpful to me from other people, was seeing some of the details on the individual deals. So my Instagram is at Real Estate Webb, WEBB. That's my last name, at Real Estate Webb. Yeah, if you want to reach out, text or call 512-525-5569. That's a Texas number. That's where I'm from. But yeah, I love talking about this stuff. It's been a huge needle mover in my family's life. So I'm happy to talk with anyone or learn from anyone regarding this topic.
Love it. Thanks so much, Beau. And Conscious Investor, thanks. I know that this is a really interesting episode, and we've covered a lot of different topics. And this is why you listen to the Conscious Investor, because we're not just talking about the deal and the mechanics of the deal, because the deal is one facet, but you have life and living, and we have to have those things married. We have to look at things in a holistic way so that we're not lopsided when we come out on the other side, so that we can, really live into the fullness of who we are created to be. So if this episode has resonated with you, or if the show has resonated with you in any capacity, you support the show in a free way. Right now, I'm trying to expand the footprint of the show. I'd love to see the show reach more people. And how do we do that in a natural way, not in a go out and pay and have somebody, get a bunch of people, quote, subscribe to it or something? Like, no, actually, you, conscious investor, your friends, your people in your network are the kind of people that are going to love the show. And so will you do me a favor, and the show a favor, and yourself a favor, by just taking a moment to share this episode or any episode that you have enjoyed with just one person in your life? And by doing that, if we all do that, we've just doubled the footprint of the show in a single episode. And when we do that, we get to have extraordinary guests come on the show, because people love coming on shows that are alive and vibrant. And you know what? You show that all the time, Conscious Investor, because people have commented. They're like, wow, you have a lot of ratings and reviews, and a lot of reviews. And so I just want to say thank you so much for taking time to leave those reviews. I do read them. They fuel my heart. And so, and they kind of wow guests. They're like, wow, I want to come on your show. So thank you for just supporting the show and showing love by sharing it and by leaving ratings and reviews. You can only do that, spoiler, over on Apple Podcasts. But I just, again, want to say thank you. If you would like to connect up with me, I'd love to connect up with you. This isn't like one of those deals where I'm just this voice behind, a microphone or a screen or whatever it is. Like, I genuinely enjoy talking with you. So if you head on over to IamAconsciousinvestor.com, you can schedule time. We can talk. And I will probably, like the first time Beau and I talked, I'll probably be walking my dog while we do that. So come for a walk with me while we talk, and let's get to know each other. Until next time.
I was like, why are you out of breath?
I know. Yeah, exactly. That's what you were saying. Like, what is that? I'm like, I'm going up the hill right now. So good. Until next time, cheers to your health, your mindset, and your wealth.